Well, okay, apparently I'm locked out of my house because the door is locked and my toddler locked it on me, and I think they're both in the basement. So eventually I'm gonna have to call them and like hope, you know, my toddler stops messing on daddy's phone and can actually have pick up the phone and let me in the house. So we'll see if that happens. But anyways, I guess I can keep going for right now about sophomore year. So I ended about my sophomore year, and I had said I loved. Part of what I loved doing was switching back and forth from 6 months of cross country and distance training to 6 months of pole vault and heptathlon training. And for me, that was a lot of fun because it encompasses, as everybody knows, two different groups of people. And I really enjoyed both groups of people, and it was fun for me. I really enjoyed the training, and I enjoyed the atmosphere of making that switch. I always say it was 2 weeks of 2 weeks of HE double hockey sticks there. I don't want to do 20. I make my athletes do 20 when they swear, so I don't want to have to do 20 when everyone sees this 8,000 times and then laughs that I swore. So, but anyways, looking at that, I really enjoyed it. However, I had been starting to really want to kind of like make my focus one thing or the other, and I couldn't decide what that was. So indoor season was a little bit of a hodgepodge. Honestly, I don't really remember my training that much because I don't really remember what I was specifically training for because I don't think I knew what I was specifically training for. My coaches were kind of letting me figure that out. Maybe one of them can tell me what it actually was, but I'm not really sure. I do remember that I was all over the place though, and I was hurting. And so I went to the doctor, and I actually got diagnosed with degenerative disc disease because what was happening was my right leg, I actually couldn't feel it anymore, which is not a good thing. I probably got to a point, I think I just have a very high pain tolerance. And so it was creating foot drop, and I was like dragging it behind me, and like I just was like really painful to run on. And then it eventually started not being painful because I couldn't feel it. And just everything, my back was hurting, and I couldn't race. I couldn't run. Everything was getting slower, and it just wasn't working out. And so I got diagnosed with degenerative disc disease, and basically I had slipped 3 discs in my back and then torn one. One was floating through my spine. I don't know, L4, L5, and S1 were completely messed up. And it took the rest of an indoor season away from me and all of outdoor season away from me. And basically they told me that I had to do physical therapy for months, but if I wanted to ever have kids, and if I wanted to ever have a rest of a season, I basically had to stop pole vaulting and anything that was pounding. So high jump, triple jump, long jump, pole vault, anything that like put that impact on the back. So I eventually, I had to kind of give that up. And that wasn't a huge, at the time that I was like, well, I kind of needed to choose one or the other, even though I know I had gone into college saying I didn't want to, but time changes you. And I kind of wanted to focus on one thing or the other. And so kind of made my decision for me of what to focus on, and was going to be focusing on distance for the rest of college. That had been my first major injury though. So getting through that injury mentally for me, I had to keep myself in focus and say, well, okay, I'm injured. I can't do anything. Like I can't run. I can barely walk right now. And I'm having to go to an hour of physical therapy a day and sit on a freaking physio ball when my team's doing a workout. And that's really frustrating. But knowing that I was going to be back and I could help my team if I was back, that's kind of what pushed me forward and continued just taking the small steps. I really learned patience that year, and quotes were huge for me. I had a quote up on my wall the whole year, just like quotes up on my wall, and they were just helping me out so much because I was very frustrated that I couldn't race and I couldn't run and I couldn't train because that was part of my life. And so I'd only had small injuries before that. And so that was my first major injury, but I did get through it. And so if you're going through an injury right now, I know I was texting with a former athlete about a week ago about she was just getting back to running from an Achilles injury. And I told her, I was like, look, patience is going to be a virtue, but you have to trust that everything you're doing is going to help you in the long run. And making those commitments, those small daily commitments, recording everything you do, that helped keep me mentally in shape, I guess. And watching video, remembering the reasons why you run and why you do things, all that kind of stuff helps you through. So PT, I always say it was almost a blessing in disguise because it made me extremely strong. My core was probably going into that junior year season was probably stronger than I would venture to say most people's core on the team. My running wasn't quite there yet, but my core was incredibly strong. And that's kind of what kept me through a lot of the tougher workouts as I was getting back into shape. I started getting back into shape when we moved into preseason. So I remember I was really scared to do like strides because any change of speed was hurting me still, and I was still kind of getting back into that. And I actually have a quote here. I really kind of wanted to backtrack for a second. One of the quotes that kept me going, especially actually through that junior season too, was you have to do it, or you need to do what you need to do when you need to do it, so you can do what you want to do when you want to do it. I'll say that again. You have to do what you need to do when you need to do it, so you can do what you want to do when you want to do it. It's actually a Joe Newton quote. Joe Newton of York High School. I don't know where I read that. I don't know where it was, but I remember that was one of the quotes that kept me going. And I had to do the stuff I needed to do. I had to do the PT. I had to do the small steps. I had to do everything else, the extra things that no one else on my team had to sit after practice and do 20 minutes of PT. After they were done with everything, they could leave. I had to do it if I wanted to be at the same level that they were at. And I just had to. So you have to do, because I knew where I wanted to be. And in order to be there, I had to do what I had to do and what I needed to do at the moment I needed to do it. So that was important to me. But cross country junior year coming back was really tough for me. I remember the first race back, it was just a 4K. And I literally had a panic attack at the line. I was freaking out. I couldn't breathe. I remember like running back to Coach Carey, and I was like, I can't race. I cannot race. I literally cannot do this. And she was like, yes, you can. I don't think she would do with me. She was like, what's going on? Like, she's having a panic attack. She's like, you're fine. You're going to race fine. You're strong. You're confident. Like, you're going to be fine. She basically had to calm me down and get me back in the line, and so I could race. And that first race did not go very well. It actually went really, really bad. Let's be honest. But, I picked up myself afterwards and was like, you know what? That was a bad race. Okay, let's keep going. And I had to make myself a goal. I wrote it down. My goal was to make the regional squad. And I knew I had a long ways to go because I was really far back on the team after that first race. The second race and third race, blah, 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 was a lot better. But it was just really tough getting back into racing. I hadn't raced in a very long time. And so every race, I would repeat myself to go 10 quick steps. One of my high school coaches, Craig Lawrence, who is now one of the boys' high school coaches at my high school, Wiedemerville South, he always used to say 10 quick steps, 10 quick steps. And Mahesh kind of had his own version of that, which was 40 quick steps. And so just thinking like you'd count, if you get complacent in a race, you basically count your lefts, almost like a pole vaulter. But you'd count your lefts, and I'd count those. I actually ended up doing the 40 quick steps. And so I'd be like, 1, 2 in my mind, like 40 quick steps. I had to take 40 quick ones, and that would get me up to my next teammate. And then I'd run with them for a while. And then when I felt a little bit better, I'd continue running with them for a little bit while. So basically, I raced myself into the 8th spot before conference. Now, in college, you get 10 people to race at the conference race. And so we raced 10, and I was like, well, if I race into the 7th spot, I'm probably not going to be part of this. Like, I got to race. This is my race. I have to race everything I possibly can. And at the time, it was really tough. I was going up. The other person who was the 7th runner at that time was my best friend. And it was really tough because I knew if I raced well, then I'd be basically taking a spot away from my best friend. And we both knew that. And so, but we also both were really, really strong team players. And I really did race well that race, and I raced into the, kind of the 4th or 5th spot right there. And so I got to race at regionals. I was one of the 7 on the line at regionals, and I did not take that as lightly. I raced really hard, and I ended up being our 3rd runner that day. And was like 45th place, and top 35 are all regions. So I think that was kind of one of my breakthrough races of like, wow, I'm back. I'm actually here. We got 6th that year as a team, so we didn't end up actually going to nationals, but we did. It was a breakthrough season for me there because looking at what I could do from a standpoint of starting the season not running full mileage, like barely running at all, to being 45th in the region by doing and I credit my PT for that, my strong core for that when I was ready to go physically, or like when I was ready to go kind of mentally and everything like that, I was ready to go physically. And that was a really, really important season for me. So one of the other things that really helped my season that year, and I know I'm losing light, I'm really sorry here, guys, but if I had my door open, I could turn on the light out here, but that's not going to happen. I'm still locked out. So if, let's see, where was I? Losing my mind. One of the big breakthroughs for me was actually running on Sundays. Now, I had always had a thing in high school. Harvey never had us really run on Sundays. And I actually think it's different now, but that was also back in 2004 to 2008. And we just kind of didn't run on Sundays. For me also, Sundays are my family day. Like Sundays are church. They're focusing on God and on family. And I just don't do things on Sundays. I am not a fan, even as a coach now, I'm not a fan of having people work out on Sundays. It's just not something in my nature. However, I do understand that as distance runners, that running on Sundays is important, especially if you're a year-long distance runner, and especially when you get to collegiate level. And so for me, I had always resisted Mahesh. I'm sorry, Mahesh. I should have listened sooner, but I had always resisted him, and he's like, run on Sundays, and I'm like, no, Sundays are my church day. I'm not going to run on Sundays. And while that's great, it also affected my training. And so I finally decided to get up earlier on Sundays before church and run on Sundays. Hey, what do you know? That actually made a huge difference. And I would feel better by the Monday workout. I would actually be able to, like, the shakeout run on Sundays would roll me into Monday's workout, and I'd feel just a whole heck of a lot better, especially after racing, usually Friday and Saturday, for, 1,500 steeplechase, whatever it was, 5K, I don't know, whatever race, anything. So I competed mostly it was my first year-round training distance, and it definitely paid off. It showed I competed in the 5K, the 1,500, the 3K steeple, 3K indoors. I had no regrets though, training, like doing the 6 months on, 6 months off, etc. before, by the way. I just wanted to say that I had no regrets, because if I had not done that, I would not be who I am today, and I would not be coaching what I am today, which I love what I coach. So, that was something, I have no regrets with that, but I do admit, I guess, that training year-round distance did help me as a distance runner, especially collegiately. So, guess the D1 coaches did know what they were talking about, but if I had gone with them, I would never have experienced what I experienced at North Central, which was everything for my life. So, I ended up qualifying for nationals, actually, I qualified, first time qualifying for nationals, first time was during a conference race where 5 of us from 3 different schools qualified for nationals in the steeplechase. Then I ended up running the last chance meets, and I ended up running a 10:59, so I broke 11, and I was actually the last person into nationals that year. They had actually opened up the field for a couple more people, so I ended up being very lucky that year and very fortunate to be able to race nationals. So I went into nationals not expecting to be All-American or anything, and I wasn't, but I went into nationals wanting to place higher than what I came in seeded wise. And so I got some pointers, great pointers from Jess Griff. And so, Jess, you were a huge help that season. Obviously from my coach, Brian Hens, from Mahesh Narayanan. And that was actually kind of when I started talking to Raph a little bit too, getting some pointers from him. So, who knows? You never know who you might get pointers from that might end up being your husband after a long time of stalking him, etc. So, anyways, I think I finished somewhere 17th to 19th in the nation, but that just fueled my passion and for the race and for racing at nationals, because that was really what I wanted to do my senior year cross country. So that brings me finally to my senior year. My senior year will get a whole podcast or a whole video cast for itself, and that will be next time. And since we're completely losing light, love you all. Have a great night, and hopefully I can get back in my house. We'll see.